Anke started her entrepreneurial journey in 2004 when she quit her software developer career in the UK and moved to Spain and started a sewing business specializing in custom flamenco dance costumes. I mean, how cool is that? It felt like riding a wild elephant, and until she realized that building a business really is a creative process. Just like sewing a dress or developing software, a magical mix of vision, skill, and soul. That insight inspired her to train as a coach so she could support other purpose-driven mavericks. She now brings everything she learned about business, tech, creativity, and psychology to help coaches and educators take their big mission project from idea to reality and beyond, to serve her clients through impactful online offers without the tech headaches, as her strategic thinking partner, trusted advisor, coach, and tech monster whisperer. She loves dogs. She's passionate and certified coach and author of Taming the Tech Monster. She's a teacher, programmer, dressmaker, and translator, and always learning. All of her favorite quotes are Albert Einstein quotes like this one: "If you can't explain it simply, you don't understand it well enough." And oh my gosh, is that true? Online tech can really feel like a jungle, doesn't it? I mean, that's been one of the themes that's been going on today. And so you want to be able to create things that allow you to impact more people, more without working more. But when you look at all the options, when you listen to all the conflicting messages you're bombarded with, you either freeze or you rush out yet again, wasting time and money on tech tools. Oh my gosh, she's singing my song. Anyway, I'm just going to bring Anke on because the good news is that, there is a method to the madness. You can tame the tech monster and you can get comfortable with it. So I'm going to bring Anke on. Hello, Anke.
Hello.
How are you?
Lovely to see you.
Yeah. I always love your story because it's so cool. And like I said, we really have had two meltdowns in the last 2 days. First, my Zoom completely didn't work and my entire class wasn't able to see it. And then yesterday morning, we were kicked out of StreamYard. So we had to redo, and I couldn't even get into Chrome, so we are operating on very little sleep on this end because we've been dealing with the tech monster. It's just so great. So, Anke, I really would like to hear your presentation and talk to you a little bit more about it. Can we just go ahead and start?
Yeah, let's just dive in. And you've sort of given like a beautiful pathway into the whole topic, right? Because seeing you giggling about it, that's kind of what it's all about, because it's not about like taming the tech monster. Doesn't mean there won't be any tech hiccups, right? It doesn't mean this stuff's complex, stuff can go wrong, right? So it's not about nothing ever going wrong. It's not about always having an instant solution to everything, right? It's the part, I find the tech monster is really not about the pixels on the screen, right? It's what it brings up in us, like our reaction. And I've seen this so many times, right? When I work a lot on screen share with people, right? So I can see, and I've seen like literally like panic attacks coming on, when, oh my God, there's an error message. And you can really you can feel like the breathing gets shallow, you can see the tension, and so I always point out that isn't that interesting? Like we both look at some pixels on a screen, that's an error message, right? And so when I go, so what was the error message? What did it say? Well, I don't know. Like I just wanted it to go away, so I closed it, right? So where my reaction with a background in software development is like, oh, an error. Isn't that interesting, right? So, like my first is like, oh, let's see, like the approach is, let's see how I can figure this out. It's an invitation to problem solve, right? Yeah. It's almost exciting if you don't have time pressure and people in the room and whatever, right? But it's the if you approach it with curiosity, you have a whole different experience of the whole scenario. Well, now, obviously, that's easier said than done when you're familiar with this kind of stuff. And that's really where it's one of those points I really carry on about in the book. It's this, for some reason, when it comes to online tech, people have the sense, I should know all this, right? Mm-hmm. And so we're very, I think, overly harsh on ourselves. I love comparing it. I don't know whether you've ever been to Tokyo, right? I don't speak Japanese, but I have been to Tokyo, and I know what it's like.
Fukuoka, Japan.
When you go and all of a sudden you're in the middle of Tokyo, okay, you can't even read the map. Right? Even if I could kind of remember the different kanji or whatever, it's like they have a different structure to, it's not kind of structured by streets and whatever. So there is literally the sense of, I'm feeling totally disoriented here because I'm on unfamiliar territory and I don't really know where to go, what to do, right?
But that's okay. That's exciting.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, right? Yeah. It's exciting, and you wouldn't expect yourself to apply for a taxi driver job. It's like, no, the first job is let's just see whether we can get across the street to the sushi bar and back alive, and once you figure that out, you can go and say, well, let's see what happens around that next corner and see whether we can, maybe make it to that park and find our way back. Right. And you slowly explore the territory for you, and you get familiar. You do, the same little task or the same little trip often enough. Now let's go get to the little shop and see whether we can, so that's how you explore your territory. You start out, okay, here's my base. Okay, so here's my hotel, and now let's see whether we can find some food and find our way back. Let's see whether we can get to the park and back, right? And once you're familiar with that, then you go, what's around the next corner? What's around the next corner, right? So it's there is a definition, and I really can't, unfortunately, I can't find where, I don't know. It basically means learning and teaching, which is just the flip side of it, is connecting something unknown to something known.
Yeah.
Right? So the job is to find the known piece, right? And then anything that's new, how can I connect that to something that I already know for it to make sense? Right? Because we've all experienced it. You've sat through a class where the instructor would connect something known to something known, and you're going to be bored out of your brains, right? And the flip side is what happens often in the tech space when you don't really know much, and you read instructions and they connect something unknown to something unknown, and you just kind of know even less at the end of that, right? So that's why people quite often don't even want to Google, because or read the documentation. I already know I'm not going to understand the answer, right? So it's that's where that sense of frustration comes from, because nobody likes to feel out of their depth like that.
Yes. That's so,
and it's really, I think it's really important to remember that it's very much like being in Tokyo without speaking Japanese. You need to go slower, and then, because there's nothing wrong with being in Tokyo without speaking Japanese. It's only a problem if you expect of yourself to navigate the town seamlessly, effortlessly, jump on the tube, come back. If you expect to zip around like a local, you're going to be disappointed and you're going to be frustrated. And it's the same with tech, right? So it's most of the time people actually, navigate things. They get on Zoom calls, they figure StreamYard out, and they, and they use the Kajabi and whatever. So it's people do figure stuff out, but there's a lot of things that you're just not familiar with. So
absolutely,
you need to slow it down and can't get frustrated because you're trying because it's your expectation, it's your thing to I should know all of this. No, you don't. This is a big area of expertise, right? And you can't get all tough on yourself just because you haven't magically figured it out overnight.
Yeah, we all start out at zero, and it's just a learning process. And I think you're right. Sometimes we put too much pressure on ourselves, to have things figured out. And I know I'm capable of a tech freak out.
Yeah, and it's like the thing is, that's also something that I'm like very kind of go into it quite a bit in the book. It's that it's not an age thing either, right? Because a lot of the time, like a lot of my clients are 50 and over, and they will go, yeah, but I didn't learn this at school. Well, neither did I, right? So it's like, and I've, had experience in a phone shop. Like I've seen lots of young people who have no idea. I always say they have quick thumbs, but they don't really understand anything. It's the same. It's like there are young people who are really savvy, and there are young people who have no idea. And there are older people who are really savvy and older people who have no idea. Like it's not an age thing, and it's not a gender thing either.
No, it isn't. And some of my clients are over 70.
Yeah.
And they can learn it just as well as anyone
Absolutely.
else. It isn't an age thing. It's the willingness to kind of fumble around and find our way and experiment and all those things, in order to get comfortable with it. And
it depends on those references. It's about, if you look at it through the lens of how can I connect something new to something, something unknown to something known, you'll find, like, if you have never had anything to do with any of this, like I live in the south of Spain. There's a lot of people who work like in the countries, like they work on the fields, know.
Yeah.
If our gardener literally has 0 reference points for any of this, right? So he's going to take longer to figure this stuff out, as somebody who was already, when I was young, we had this thing to make music or something. Like, when people have reference points, it's just like language learning. If you've never learned a foreign language before, the first one's going to be tough.
Yes.
If you learn other languages before, then with every other language, you just have more reference points, more points that you can connect something new to. I see, this is just like Latin, or it's totally the opposite of Greek. Isn't that interesting? Right? So it is, some people will learn it quicker than others, right? And again, there's nothing wrong with that. We all have areas of expertise and areas where we just don't have that much expertise, But the good news, I think the good thing is, and I want to really come to the 2 ways people get themselves into tech trouble, right? Because there's one that is really rampant, where I think I actually have good news, right? When quite often, when you try and build something, say if you have an idea for an online program or like anything really, so it's usually, unless it's just like, let's put together a little Zoom call, like it's usually a more complex thing. So before you go out and build an entire online program, I would always recommend, let's just do it like software developers do it. Let's just validate the idea first. Let's not run off and build a lot of stuff, spend a lot of time and energy and money creating a whole bunch of content before you're really sure that people actually want to buy it, right? So it's that piece of like, let's validate the idea. Let's make sure we're not on the wrong track here. Let's make sure this is positioned right so that people, when you offer to somebody, they go, oh my God, I really need this, rather than, well, I don't know, good for you, right? So it's like that validation part is critical. Right. And while you need to validate, and that's like the biggest mistake that a lot of people make. And I've had people like in my DMs, like kind of in tears almost, right, to say, I have this idea for this program and I know it's powerful, but like all the landing pages and the funnel and the this and that, and then they throw all these terms at you. Right. And it's like, this is so overwhelming. Right. And I've been sitting on this idea, and I've had clients who come like, you know what, I've been trying to make this work for years, because there's always this hurdle. Now you need this email thing and the funnel and the, and landing pages and registration thing and whatever, right? And integration and Zapier and API keys and what the thing is. And people like, their head explodes, right? And all of a sudden it feels like, I'm never going to bring this out, So where I'm saying, well, your first job is to validate the idea, right? The first job is to see whether you can get somebody to pay you for this thing, right?
Yes.
And while you're in this process, because it can take a while, because usually we're too close to the elephant. Like our idea, like what I think people need to know is usually not what people want to buy, right? So it quite often requires a few iterations until you get this right? And in that phase, I'm always like, I'm not saying you shouldn't use tech, but it's not the time to tinker with toys, right? It's the time to use what you have, right? Because there's always three elements. You need to have a way to connect with potential clients, get them into your world somehow, your sign up thingy, whatever, right? You need a way to collect payment, and you need a way to be able to deliver what you've just sold, right? And so, yes, you can use tech for all of that, but in the simplest possible form, the connection piece can be a phone call.
Yeah.
Right? The connection piece can and probably should be a personal email or direct message to some, because the first people who are going to buy your new thing are the people who already know you.
Yes.
Right? You're not going to sell that to somebody who's never heard of you before.
Right.
So these are people that you can just message or you can just call. So that's a connection piece. So no new tech needed for that, right?
Okay.
Payment, well, the simplest possible way is, hey, make a transfer. Hey, here's my PayPal link. Like whatever you have, Venmo me, whatever, right? So let's just get the damn money over, right? And so, and the delivery piece is, okay, let's get on a Zoom call and I put the recording in a Google Drive folder, right?
Yeah.
So if you're not tech savvy, that's how you do your validation part. Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's like I'm saying, like for me, I'm going to have a decent funnel and a proper, like I'm going to have the whole cadoodle, because for me, that's easier than tinker around with Google Sheets, right? So because I have it all set up and I'm kind of familiar with it. But I mean, in that phase, in that validation phase, I always say to be like, use what you're familiar with. Tinkering with toys is not priority at this point. At this point, the priority is to see whether you can get somebody to buy your thing. Right. And so that drops off. Like, and I had this, I remember this one gentleman who I didn't even know him. Like he messaged me, right? And he was like totally in that space, like overcomplicating things. He thought he needed all this stuff before he could, before he could kind of offer this to anyone. And so I just asked him, I said, well, do you have people who you think might be interested in this? He goes, no, I have my community and they love my stuff, right? So he'd written a book and now he had the idea for this course. And I go, so, okay, so could you email them?
Email them?
Yeah. And I'm going, okay, do you have like the outline of what this would be? Yeah. Well, okay. Will you email them? He goes, well, is that all? And he emailed them, and like two days later, he messaged me. He says, "Oh my God, I had to turn the thing off because like it's all filled," and and he didn't realize how little he needed in order to actually bring his idea in front of the people he made it for. Right. Yeah. And so I think a lot of people are always like, oh, whew, like that drops a whole bunch of weight off. Right.
Yeah. And anxiety.
And so it's like, that's the thing. It does not say it, like, I'm not suggesting you shouldn't use tools you're familiar with. Like, it's not like, oh, you must put it in a Google folder. No, you use what you're familiar with, right? Yeah. So that's not, tech tools isn't something that need to be getting in your way or slowing you down if your job is to figure out whether you actually have a valid product idea in front of you. Absolutely. Or whether it's just, a nice idea.
Yeah, and that really is talking to people.
Yeah.
And finding out what their problems and issues are and their challenges and just directing that to that. So yes, I agree with you. I think when I started out, oh my gosh, I don't even know what I was using anymore, but it was very simple, and just posting some things on LinkedIn, and I had no idea what I was doing, actually, Anke. But yeah, that anxiety comes up for me when I'm dealing with something I haven't dealt with before. And so I do have to go back and keep it simple, because simple works.
I mean, simple is really the way to go, especially when the job is, it's like we'll get to the other side of that coin in a second. But, initially when you, And that's the thing. It doesn't mean you're new in business or anything. Like it can be like this process is the same for any new offer. Like you might have been delivering your service in one way, and now how about a membership? Or like, like it could be just, and it's always, you always kind of start the iteration process again. If it's a new way or a new, slightly new market, it's always the same thing. So you want to keep it to what you're familiar with, right? The three parts to it, they're always the same. You need to connect with people, you need to collect payment, and you need to deliver what they've just bought, right? So that's always the same. So, but it can be incredibly simple to get you off the ground,
right? Right.
And so you don't want to let that, because that's the thing, you can kind of go, and I've had people who literally said, like, I've been trying to make this work for years, and that's, I mean, that's heartbreaking. How many people could they have served in the meantime, if they had just found a way to get moving rather than having this, because it is a lot, like if you go, and it's a rabbit hole, right? And that's the problem actually, because this is the same, none of this applies to specifically people who aren't tech savvy, right? Like if you can have people who are like kind of scared of tech, they usually like to hear that bit, like you don't need any of it. And it applies just the same for people who are actually tech savvy, because they have a different problem, right? They're not scared of it, but they can get lost tinkering and fiddling around with, this video platform, that other thing, like, now look, there's this new toy, like you can get lost in the joy of tinkering with toys, And it's kind of the same problem in a way, because you don't get your idea in front of the people it's for. So it's the same thing. It will still slow you down. Probably if you go into the, like playing with Tinker Toys, if you go down that rabbit hole, you probably won't be as frustrated because you enjoy tinkering, right? So it's not as scary or frustrating, but it distracts you just the same. Just the other way, right? And the other side of that is it's kind of the next phase, because on the next phase, once you've validated your idea, say you've kind of, okay, so now I've taken the first group of people through it. This has been amazing, like we're really onto something, right? And now you want to open it up instead of to 5 people, 10 people, like, okay, we can take 50 people through. Like next time I want to, I want to now really turn this into my flagship product. Now you find that the same simple tools that got you off the ground now really bite you in the butt, right? And I've seen that too, where somebody literally came and said, I've got this program and I've run it a couple of times and people are asking me for it. Like people are asking when I'm going to run it again. And I'm going, well, that's a luxury problem. Why wouldn't you? She goes, just the thought of all that admin stuff. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Well, there she was, right? Oh, no, I just have it on a spreadsheet. Right. And so here there's just a PayPal link. So when they pay, well, the thing like just collects payment. And then she has to manually make sure people have access to all the stuff. Right. So, and then if somebody signs up while she's asleep, she gets in the morning and they're already anxious because they've paid 8 hours ago and didn't receive anything. Right. So, and there's all of a sudden the simple system that gets you off the ground does not help you deliver, or that isn't going to work for more people because it involves a bunch of manual work. And it's, all of a sudden you spend, that's what this one lady, she was like, oh my God, like all these emails and all this forwards and backwards, and I didn't got the thing, I don't have the Zoom link, like if you want to get ready to offer this to more people, to bring more people in, then you want to start, I call it like, then you want to sort of build it out, and you want to flesh it out and develop this whole ecosystem. It's still the 3 pieces, but now you want to think about, okay, how can we be a little bit more efficient so that doesn't always require me having my hands in it, right? So there now you start, well, okay, the first piece to look at, I always start in the back with, okay, what is it that people have actually bought, like when they're actually clients? So how can I make it so that when they pay, they automatically get access to what they need to get access to.
Yes.
Now we're talking online course platforms or membership platforms
Yeah.
that usually cover the payment piece, and based on what they've bought, they get access to the right stuff, right? So that would be your first step when it comes to, let's just kind of build this out properly now, right? So you start there, so that you don't have to, every time somebody buys, you have to then manually, frantically send them stuff, right? And you have control over who has it and who didn't, and who has not paid the payment plan. And, you know, so that's stuff where you can really get yourself, and it isn't just that it will really frustrate the life out of you, because it's manual, it's time consuming, it's error prone. You know, it's not just that, it also, you know, creates a client experience that usually isn't what you want.
Yeah.
Right? And to the extreme point, like I've had, you know, somebody's comes like, you know what, like, God, I really need to do something, because I've just had somebody sign up for a $10,000 program, and she canceled, like she wanted out and wanted her money back because it was Cho. Like she says, this is ridiculous. Like I've signed up, and I got the wrong stuff, and I got invitations to last year's call, but I didn't get the Zoom link for the call I should have been on. And immediately, like, you know, she asked to fix it. It kept happening because they created a mess in the email system. And so at the end of it, she lost that client because the trust was broken, because she no longer said, well, like, if you don't know what you're doing, like like, you know, so it's also that client experience that really suffers. So when you're ready to, you know, when you know for sure that you've got something worth expanding on, you want to start. But again, you start one piece at a time. You're not going to kind of eat the whole elephant all at once. Like, so you start off at the back. Like, okay, that's the first piece to sort out. Like, how can I make sure that when they pay, they get access to the thing? And, you know, whatever, if it's a course area where there's a welcome video where people get, like, here's the schedule, here is the stuff you need, right? So that people feel welcome and know, you know, they have that confirmation that, yeah, I've just made the right decision, you know, and once you have that, then you can think about, like, okay, now how can we, you know, systemize and organize the connection piece? You know, so now we have a lovely landing page rather than just a manual phone call, right? So you can slowly, one step at a time, you make things more efficient and you make things more streamlined so that you can get your hands out of the machinery, right? So they couldn't there, then you have the problem. Like if people are like, oh, I just like to keep it simple. Well, no, that is no longer simple, because it actually creates a mess, and it creates massive amounts of manual, you know, tasks and admin tasks, and that people, you know, people make mistakes and the wrong stuff, and it goes forwards and backwards, and that is massively frustrating for everyone involved.
And you know, you're right, Anke. I think that when we get to that point where we need to be able to offer something more, that's when we can learn about landing pages or
exactly.
Or, you know, the other. And I know I'm in a course software that I won't mention because I'm getting out of it and moving to Go High Level. Yeah, and so I can get rid of that expensive calendar and that expensive mail system and all those different things, and narrow it down so that it's actually simpler in the long run.
Can I push back on that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. Am I wrong?
Just a tiny bit, because, you know, obviously the platform, it's like I use that. So, you know, Go High Level, I'm a big fan. I have all my stuff on it. So, and the complexity is still the same, right? It is obviously, the communication between the pieces is easier. Right. So if you send an email or you have a landing page where somebody can submit a form, and then that is already in your email system. So you don't have to worry about how these systems communicate. The thing is, that's not usually your biggest problem. Right. Most of the time, the all-in-one platforms like to sell you this, like, ooh, they're all in one. Yeah, but they're still all there. Right. You still need to know how to flesh out. Because the part where I think this gets difficult for people is there is a piece between, I have an idea for a membership, Right? So people come with this like, oh, I want to serve people and this is what I want to create. And then they jump straight into the software, and it doesn't matter whether it's like MailChimp or whether it's like a Go High Level or something else. It does not matter what it is. People jump straight there. Now the software goes, well, we're talking zeros and ones here.
Yeah. And
it goes,
yeah.
What do you want your form to be called? Which tag do you want to assign? Like, what do you like? And all of a sudden, you kind of like are confronted with detailed questions where you sometimes don't even know what it means, and you certainly you don't know the implications of a decision, right? You don't know what else you're going to mess up if you say this or that, right?
Yeah.
And the problem isn't that. The problem is you've kind of skipped over a whole step.
A whole bunch of,
right? That people aren't usually, they skip it, not because they think, whatever, they kind of don't know it's there.
Yeah.
Right? Nobody talks about that because software documentation talks about, if you go to the help section and the tutorials, they show you how to use the software.
Right.
Right? But they don't tell you how to translate your idea from, I want a membership, to, okay, what does that actually look like on like, lists and forms and pages and automations and all of that. So there is this piece like, there's something in the middle that isn't as big and fluffy, high level, like I want a program, but it isn't as nitty gritty as what software needs to function. So it's this piece in the middle. And a little tiny example is I remember somebody coming, she goes, I want to offer a mastermind for my existing clients. Okay. Well, the funny part was, have you asked them, do they actually want that? No.
They want
okay, let's just start there. But anyway, she goes, should I use Telegram or whatever the other thing was, Slack or Telegram?
Yeah.
And I'm like,
I don't use either.
Okay. Well, okay, let's just take a step back. In order for you to make that decision, let's just start somewhere else here and say, okay, how do you see your mastermind to work? Like, what happens if I go, hey, I love the idea, I'm in, now what happens?
Yeah.
I know. Okay, so will there be live calls in a group? Okay, yeah. Okay, will they have access to training materials? Yeah, I hadn't thought of that, right? And then the piece, okay, do you want people to communicate amongst each other between calls? She goes, I don't know, not really. Oh, so what do you want Slack or Telegram for then? Because both of those are tools to allow people to communicate amongst each other when there is no call, right? Yeah. So it's like, no. When you actually think through how exactly you want this thing to run, then the tech all of a sudden, like, well, Telegram or Slack wasn't even on the table anymore, right? But then you know much better what it is you're looking for and what you need and what you don't need. So all of a sudden, all these questions that come at you on the tech front will be easier to answer or go away altogether. It's just because people tend to skip that bit and, like, don't know how to think through like the actual, the flow, like how does that actually work, right? That's the piece that nobody talks about.
Yeah.
And that's what gets people into trouble. So, and I always say what looks like a tech problem never is, because it's always that.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And the reason that we're moving is because we've been in one program for a long time, an all-in-one. And we recently developed an app through Actionera, and that interacts with Go High Levels. So we have all the support and everything we need. But my tech guy's learning it right now, because I don't want to have to learn Go High Level until we've got it set up and we can do what we want to do.
I mean, see, that's the other piece of it, right? To find so you don't have just like, well, in your house, you don't do everything yourself, right? I don't know, like I don't try and repair my car, like I will go and find help. That's the other part of it, right? I'm always say, well, just like with a financial advisor, like don't do fear-based outsourcing, right? I always say, like, you want to understand, at least on a big picture level, you don't want to understand enough to be a good client for someone. Right? Yeah. Because otherwise it's going to be, like you're going to be ripped off left, right, and center, because people can smell it a mile away that you have no idea. And then you really want to make sure you find somebody you trust. And a good gauge for that is like, if you have a conversation with somebody about helping you with tech, if at the end of that call you feel stupid and overwhelmed, run the other way.
Yeah.
Like if you talk to somebody who offers to help you with that stuff, you want to feel heard, understood, held. That's what you're looking for. Like that's, and obviously the recommendations help, but you really, it's I've had so often where people are like, oh, I don't, they're kind of like these tech people, they sort of talk down on you, and then I feel really like the dumbest, person on earth. Like that is a red flag, like a big red flag.
Yeah.
Find somebody who makes you feel that they get you and that they really care about helping you, create what you want to create.
And that's in anything that you do, is approaching it from that point of view. And you're right. I think when I think back about, oh my gosh, some of the technology that I've paid on, some of the courses that I've paid for, I don't even want to think about how much money I've thrown away. I mean, seriously, because you really don't know what you're buying unless you've really, what you want to happen.
Yeah. And I think that's kind of almost sometimes you think, well, you're not consciously and happily throwing money out the window, but it is hard to avoid kissing frogs if you just don't know what you're looking for yet, and you don't know what you need, and you can't discern it well. You just trust what people tell you because you don't know any better, but that's the same with that can happen with your car garage as well.
Absolutely. My car is sitting in the driveway right now because the power steering went out. But I'm not going to go out and fix it, I mean,
but you're going to go and do some research and find a garage that you trust, right?
Absolutely. We only take it to one place, because you found that one that you trust. It's like my father had a gas station up on the corner, many years ago. I mean, he's long past, but he always went to that same gas station because he knew the mechanic.
Yeah.
And it really is finding someone who cares about you and who provides good service.
Absolutely.
So Anke, I know you've written the book, so could you talk a little bit about, what's in there and what people can learn through it? Because I'd really love to hear, because I want people to get this book.
Yeah. No, it's actually, I don't know, well, with the screens everywhere you can see it, right? So there it is, like Taming the Tech Monster. And if I had to kind of describe it in a word, right, that little dragon there?
Yeah.
It kind of tells the whole story. It's basically saying that what feels like a scary monster is really just the cute little dragon that wants to play.
Oh, you know what? I tell people on LinkedIn, it may seem like a big, hairy monster, but monsters can be tamed, and
there's nothing, like, it's not a tech book, like there's nothing technical in there, because I also didn't want it to be out of date in a year, right? So there's nothing technical in there. It is about myth busting. It's about, setting people's heads straight about, like, okay, bottom line is, like, give yourself some slack here, right? Yeah. You're not too old. You're not too female, like you're not too whatever. So it's like you have what it takes to figure this out if you can allow yourself at the pace that you can go, right? If you allow yourself to look at this like, oh, this is unfamiliar territory and it'll just take some time to explore it for myself and literally approach it like, the newbie in Tokyo. Yeah. Then you have the experience you just drop the frustration in it all. Like, and we all know when we're not stressed, when we're not tense, when we're not anxious, we learn better, we problem solve better, we're more creative, like we just function better. So the idea is to help you. And I've had this, it's beautiful when people come like, oh, I used to really freak. And now I just look at it and think, let's see how we can figure this out. Like turn it into a game, like come at it with curiosity, right? Yes. So and that makes a massive difference, right? And there's like, some stuff explained where it's like, okay, when things you might have heard, like, oh, I don't know, WordPress and all-in-one, like which one should I like? Okay, this is how you work that out for yourself. Mm-hmm. This is how you discern what you need and what you don't need, right? So it's more your travel guide throughout Tokyo, basically.
Well, and I was just thinking that Oh, what did that bring up? Well, when I first started out, we didn't even have any of the internet or anything. Not really. We were doing, like phone memberships, and doing
Do
it
you
that
remember those phone, like these
way.
teleconferences?
Yes, teleconferences, yes. But you know what it really reminds me of? Have always been terrified of losing my way, of not being, when I'm driving, getting in a strange, and I'm from Florida, I'm living in Cleveland now. And so I would call my husband freaked out, I'm here, no, the light's red, I don't know what street this is, I'm lost, and I drove my secretary crazy. I drove everybody crazy with these calls about, I'm lost, I'm not going to find my way. And then they came out with GPS. They came
Yep.
out with GPS, and it took me a while to understand what that was all about. But oh my gosh.
Game changer,
Someone
right?
like me, yeah, for someone like me who doesn't like being lost, that was such an amazing thing. So you really have to find the right tool and have that curiosity. And when something new comes up, it may just solve the problem you have right now. But
Yeah.
yeah,
But look at it as a tool. I think that's a brilliant way of putting
yeah,
it, right? Because it's a tool. It's like it's not out there. It's not like a dragon is out to get you. Because that's what people often happens, right? They have a problem, like something happens, it doesn't go the way they thought it should. And then like, oh my God, I knew I wasn't gonna, and their mind goes, I knew I was going to be useless at this, and this thing hates me. And, and by the way, my dad who said I was stupid when I was 4, he was right after all. Like, people go down these rabbit holes where it just doesn't help, and
yeah.
if because if you're like, you're not going to even read the error message that might just say, hey, just reload the page, right?
Yes, I can't tell you how many times I've missed the one thing at the bottom that was, you have to do this, and
Yeah.
it can just be it's just a learning process.
Yeah. And I think the piece that I see a lot that is really frustrating for people, I always call it's the difference between memorizing and understanding, right? When people kind of like, oh my God, for God's sake, there's a new version, isn't like blue on the right. Now the button is like on the left. And it throws them entirely because they don't really understand how it works. They've just memorized some steps,
Yeah, and
right?
then
Then things change and it really throws them. It happens in language learning, right? When people just kind of memorize some phrases and then somebody says something different and like, So it's like, because a lot of the time, like email marketing platforms, like they all work the same, like in principle, in essence, that's the piece that's worth understanding, right? Like, what are the elements here? So we've got a list of people and there's an email and there's like, there aren't really that many pieces. And then you can sort of see they show up in all the systems, right?
Yeah.
And so then it doesn't matter if you change into a different platform because it's like, that's kind of the same stuff. They just do it a little bit differently and it looks a little bit different.
Yeah.
And that helps a lot. That helps much more than trying to memorize the menu options on one particular thing.
Yeah, and just I think every kind of technology that you use has support teams, and
absolutely
you can get help with that part. It's you're right. It's understanding how it all works together and how you're going to communicate and all of that makes such a difference. And we get scared, I mean,
because it's a lot, right? It's a lot.
I was having a tech meltdown yesterday and this morning. So,
but see, like you're here today, right?
Yeah,
see, nothing happened.
We pulled it off. I mean, you just have to be ready. And this time, because in my last summit, I accidentally hit end stream. And so for the first day, none of the things were recorded. And so we just gave it away to everyone. We just gave the videos away to everyone. But it was, I mean, things happen. Stuff happens. And you just have to, I think you're right. That whole element of curiosity, that whole element of finding your way around. I mean, I was born in Japan. So people expect me to know something. I'm sorry, I don't speak Japanese. And if I went to Japan, I would have to do the same things that everybody else does to learn my way around. and Tokyo is one of those places I want to go to. So yeah, you just have to take a deep breath and think about what you're doing, and then you can be curious. So Anke, I know you have the book, and I wanted to drop that in the chat so that people could get it. And if you would just tell people what this is, so that they know.
That's a PDF copy of the book.
Okay.
It's a quick read. It's like sort of very story based, and
wonderful.
I have like an entertaining writing style, and it's definitely not a tech book, but I always say, like, if you look at the sort of the subtitle, I always say, like, if joy and confidence in tech, if you kind of can't imagine how this could possibly go in the same sentence, well, that book's for you, because I will change your mind.
Yeah, and I've talked with you a number of times, Anke, and I know that you have this rich, varied background, with all of the stuff that you've done, and you haven't been afraid to try something new, and you've created, a wonderful membership program and all these different things with the Mavericks. Could you talk a minute about that?
Yeah, I find in my world, all good things happen through people I know, right? So I always look for ways to create a platform to bring people together, and so I have my little Mavericks community, and Mavericks. What I mean by that is that I have the philosophy that when we build a business, it's not about following somebody else's path, right? And I mean, it's not even a business thing, it's in life in general, right? I think it's about creating your own path. It's about learning, even like my Facebook community is called, like, don't just learn, create. Business building for Mavericks,
that one
right? Because I believe that it isn't, yes, you go and learn from other people, right? There's no point reinventing the wheel, but don't expect what you learn over here, that's now how you have to do it, right? That's one piece of the puzzle, and you pull out of there what is relevant, and you follow it until it no longer makes sense. But it's like you look at it as one piece of the puzzle. It's not the whole puzzle, it's just a piece. Right, so you learn from other people, and the objective isn't to find the one person or the one program that will tell you everything. The objective is to learn what you need to learn in order to create your own way of doing things, because it's the only way you'll ever be really powerful. So, and that's kind of a bit of a maverick way, because that's not how, that's not what you've been told when you go online. Everybody goes like, just follow my proven success formula. So nobody encourages people, because it's not the easy route, right? But I mean, the other one isn't either, right? So that's the thing. It's just, yes, it's a creative process, and it'll take some iterations. And so the question is, are you willing to go on the ride? And if you come at it with this sense that it's about creating art, not so much about the finished piece, right? Then you kind of get rid of that, like, oh, how are we going to get there faster? Like, where's the fastest? Like, no, it's like you are on a creative journey to build the business and the life that you want to live. Right. So, and you do it your way, not necessarily alone if you don't want to, but your way. And that's the maverick piece. And so I'm gathering people who agree with that and who don't want to chase somebody else's path, and come together and support each other.
Yeah, it is about not copying someone else.
Yeah.
Not copying their success. It's about, and I always tell people this from a branding perspective, people don't buy from you because you're the best. They buy from you because you're different, and it's their kind of different. So you have to be yourself. You can't be someone else. I mean, I had somebody copy my LinkedIn profile completely. I mean, completely. I mean, he literally was calling himself a master personal brand strategist. I mean, everything
that's funny.
I had, he copied it, and I wrote to him and I said, you really need to do this, and not. And
you should hire me.
What I told him was, just don't do this. Come to my lucrative LinkedIn live streams, and we'll look at it from there. And I don't know whatever happened to him, but I didn't report him. I just set him straight and said, this is where you need to go. So Anke, you are always fabulous, and I do.
Thank you. Always a joy to come here.
Yeah, and you know what? I haven't been back to the Mavericks connection, and I need to do that because it is such a great membership. So thank you, Anke. And
Thank you for having me.
and for all of you who are listening, Anke will be featured in the app that we've listed for you to download. We'll also be so she isn't in there yet. We're going to put everybody in there and do them as featured experts. But you'll also be able to download the app and get all of this information. So if you have a VIP ticket, if you have a VIP ticket, you're going to get all of Anke's stuff and more, because that's what it's going to be. So Anke, thank you so much. You put the cap on the day, and I just appreciate you so much.
Thanks so much. I always love talking to you.
So, Anke, I'm going to say goodbye to you now. I'm going to talk to the group just a little bit more. And thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Take care.